when we do like a long trip, I prefer to stay at Airbnbs, make it more like home and have space for the kids to run around. I mean, I'll definitely miss out on the amenities that a hotel can provide, breakfast and all that, but it's kind of hectic when you're in a small room with 4 people, like 2 kids.
Hey there, Points people! You just heard a clip from Katelyn from Jun Katelyn. Katelyn grew up traveling at a very young age and has been to more than 26 countries. She's always loved traveling for as long as she can remember. Relocating to Hong Kong at 3 years old opened her chances to travel more as a family, then she moved to London during her college years when she traveled through Europe. Now, she lives in California with her 2 kids and her husband. In this episode, Katelyn and I discuss how to book travel on points from the US to Korea, exploring Korea with kids, and how to get your spouse to stop hoarding points. Katelyn also shares how her family earned points through her family's business travel on United, which they used to book Asiana Airlines tickets. If you're a frequent United flyer, you may be interested in the United Explorer card, which gets you a free checked bag when flying with United and access to exclusive award space that isn't available through the general public. Remember, if you decide to apply for the United Explorer card or any other card, never apply directly through Google. Always use a friend or creator's referral link. If you're interested in supporting this show when you apply for your next card, check out geobreezetravel.com/cards. And if you're not sure what card is right for you, I offer free credit card consultations at geobreezetravel.com/consultations. And we have the links to the United Explorer card and the free consultation form for you in the show notes as well. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast, a show for anyone wanting to level up their travel hacking lifestyle. I'm your host, Julia Menez. I'm a travel hacker, coach, speaker, Filipino-American ENTJ who loves solid travel gear and using shortcuts on spreadsheets. On this show, I'm on a mission to bring you travel hackers from all walks of life to help you level up your travel hacking game. We dive into credit cards, miles, points, strategy, mindset, and the secrets behind how to travel the world for next to no cost. So, let's get hacking. Hey Katelyn, welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here today. We are going to be talking about Korea and family trips to Korea, comparing the 2 major Korean airlines, Asiana and Korean Air, and then also talking about a fun business class trip that you guys have planned. Before we jump into all of that, though, tell us a little bit about you and your background and how did you get into the game of points and miles?
I am originally from Korea, but I grew up in Hong Kong. So being in Hong Kong, we did travel a lot to Asian countries when I was growing up there. And then I moved to London to study, and that's when I did majority of the European countries. And now that I'm in California with my family, we try to do international trips together as a family of 4. Before we jumped into the points and miles game, I kind of had some idea because my husband was already accumulating points through his credit cards, but I don't think he really knew how to really use them. All we were doing were probably like travel portals. That's how we used to redeem our points. And then somehow I just came across someone's Instagram account talking about travel hacking. And at first I was a bit like, what is this? And then the more I saw people talk about it, I got interested in it. So just like a few months ago, I started doing more research and learning about it and diving in.
Yeah, so you're super new to the game. So You said your husband already had a couple cards. You guys were redeeming points through the portal. Did you have any cards yet at that point? Or did you do research before getting any of your own cards?
I probably just had like the authorized user cards. I don't think I had my own like traveling cards. I had just like the normal credit cards.
Did he know what he was getting into, or did he just see like a Jennifer Garner commercial or like a Chase Ink commercial or something online and was like, oh yeah, I'll get these cards, and then we can get like 1.25 cents per point through the portal, not knowing the deep world that this could get into?
He was very much about like accumulating points. So he had, I guess it's not that big, but like he was always accumulating and he didn't really want to use it. So when we were doing our first, like our family trip of 4, I said, why don't we use these points? Like you have all these points. And he was like, but all like 400,000 is just going to go away. And I'm like, but that's the point of it. Like you're meant to use it. So he was quite hesitant at first. And that was still through the travel portal back then. And only recently we did the United through Asiana redemption. He still asks me a lot of questions because I'm the one suggesting, let's open this card, and then we can do this. I'm kind of like step by step telling him my plans of why we're doing this or how we're doing it. He has a basic idea, but not like me. Like I'm constantly reading about it and trying to learn about it.
For everybody out there who's listening, who's like, I can't get my player two into this, or my player two is hoarding points, what would your advice be to those people for actually earning the points and then actually using the points? Because like you mentioned, that's what they're for.
Yeah, I think it really helps to be patient and like tell him there are so many people doing this. And I think the moment he felt more positive about it is when I did the first business class redemption that we're going to be flying this summer. So he's like, oh, wow, like this can happen. Like, oh, this. And he would ask me, like, where did you get all these points? Like, this is a card when we applied that we got these amount of points. And, that's how we're going to do it. So I have to like explain and show him. I think showing is the best way to kind of teach your player number two that it can happen.
Yeah, oftentimes people are a little bit skeptical until they do see that first redemption, even if it's a small one, even if it's not a business class flight, but just, hey, honey, we saved $500 on this weekend trip. That can really convert some people. Also, I like to say that social proof is really useful. So if you just want to listen to this podcast and binge listen to it on your next road trip with your spouse and listen to all of these people, 100+ people who do points and miles, I think that can help as well.
Definitely. I think that is, yeah, like you mentioned, a small redemption. That's how we started.
What were a couple of the small redemptions that you started with?
Because we have family in Asia, we try to do at least one trip to Asia every year. So an economy class ticket for 4 of us, that kind of redemption, or like an Airbnb stay.
That is still a really big redemption. Most people are like, no, you traveled halfway around the world on points. So it's still a pretty big redemption. Walk us through how you did that when you were saying, okay, we want to fly 4 of us over to Korea. What was even your planning process? Because we get a lot of requests for, hey, how do we get to Korea? How do we get to Japan? How do we go to Taiwan or Singapore or anywhere in Asia on points and miles? So how did you kind of approach that?
I don't think it's that complicated. I mean, it's very straightforward because Korean Airlines and Asiana is probably the 2 most biggest airlines in Korea. And I do feel like we did take Korean Air a few years ago, but it wasn't through redemptions. And after I learned more about the points game, there isn't really an easy way to get flights on Korean Air through points. So automatically my choice was Asiana because we have United points, we have cards that transfer to the United portal. So after we transferred to United, we just try to find the cheapest redemption.
Were you already aware that Asiana and United were both Star Alliance and that you could book Asiana through United? You were already aware of all of that? Because that's like a level 2, level 3 thing for people in the game being like, wait, how did you know that you can book Asiana through United?
So before I moved to California, my husband was doing a lot of traveling through his business and he was taking a lot of United flights. And I think maybe he took a flight to Korea a few times. So he said it was through United, but he was on an Asiana flight. So I was like, well, I don't understand. What do you mean? And then he couldn't explain that to me in the beginning. So that came from him. And that's how I guess I knew.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's not intuitive to a lot of people who are first starting out is you can book some airlines through different alliance partners. And since Asiana is part of the Star Alliance network, you can book them through United, through Air Canada. One of my favorite ways to book them is through Avianca, and by using seats.aero to find availability on Asiana business class or economy. And they have a ton of availability in economy. If you are looking for last minute economy tickets for a family of 4, you can often pull it off in the next week or 2 if you're just like, hey kids, let's go to Korea for spring break. They probably won't have business class, but they often will have economy availability on Avianca if you wanted to fly on Asiana that way, which is a pretty nice thing to be able to do.
Right. See, I didn't know that. I only know about the United and Asiana partnership.
Do you remember how many points you transferred over to United in order to do the booking for a family of 4?
I would like to say it was somewhere around 200, 250. I might be wrong. I think it was something like that.
200,000 round trip for 4 people?
Yeah, round trip.
That's not bad at all because...
Actually, my fourth, not my 4th child, but the 4th person, like my youngest child, he probably didn't need a ticket because he was still like an infant.
Okay, so 200,000 points for 3 people round trip. You had a lap infant for the entire trip?
Yeah, we did.
What is the experience like with Asiana? Do they have bassinets or anything for people who have lap infants? Because I know sometimes
certain airlines will make it a lot easier on parents than others when it comes to having a lap infant, especially in economy.
Oh, they're very nice. I mean, I think a lot of Asian airlines are very accommodating, and Asiana definitely is one of them. And they did give us a basket option, which my child never really slept in. But we were kind of lucky. We traveled during the pandemic, and the flight was like 70% empty. So even though we had a bassinet, we were all in like 2 rows together. Almost like 5, 6 rows behind us were empty. So we all kind of laid down traveling to Asia.
Yeah, that's what they call poor man's business class. That's awesome. So you've experienced Asiana and Korean Airlines, both to Korea, between Korea and the United States. How would you compare the two products? Is there one that you like better as far as seats or experience or food or pre-departure or just airplane?
So I've flown Korean Air and Asiana Air from the United States to Korea and also to Hong Kong and Southeast Asian countries, and as well as to Europe. And I feel like I prefer Korean Air just because, number one, their food feels a little more high quality. I don't know if it's because of the way they have the bibimbap option, which comes in like a glass bowl, even on economy. So that's really nice. And the airplanes seem a bit newer to me, seems a bit more spacious. So I, in general, prefer Korean Air. But now that I'm kind of tied down to Asiana, I try to see, the positive sides of Asiana too.
Yeah, Korean Air, once upon a time, was a transfer partner of Chase. There was this awesome sweet spot where you could fly to Hawaii on the way to Korea and then just like stop in Hawaii, and it was super cheap to fly that route. But, RIP to those days of the past. Korean Air is a little bit more difficult to book with points versus Asiana. But since they are a member of SkyTeam, if you have 10 million Delta points, you could do it. But you could also book it through KLM or Air France Flying Blue, and they do tend to have some availability through there as well. So if you wanted to fly Korean Air, availability isn't always there, but you might be able to find it through Air France and book it that way. And the great thing about Air France is that you can combine points from pretty much any flexible currency, whether it's Chase or Amex, Citi, Capital One, Bilt. If you have a few points with each of those, you can combine all of them into your Air France account and then book Korean Air that way. I've also only flown them in economy way back in the day, and they were so good with people with kids. I remember they had like these name tag stickers, and they would just write your seat number like 45E and then like stick it on the kid. And they're like, do you want us to like walk your kid around for 20 minutes while you take a nap? And the moms were like, yes, that's amazing. And so they would just walk your kid and then like bring it back after 20 minutes. So, and that was an economy. I've never seen another airline do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that part. One of the flights, I had to travel back with my toddler all by myself. And so many of the stewardess came over and kept checking, like to the point where I felt like it was a bit too much, like almost every hour. Or when she's crying, they'll offer to like carry her. Do you want to take a break? Do you need the bathroom? They're very, very, very nice.
Yeah, they're so accommodating for anybody with children. So when you're flying to and from Korea, let's talk about the Korean airport situation at Incheon, which supposedly is like the second best airport in the world right after Singapore Changi Airport. Tell us about Incheon Airport and what you can expect there.
Incheon Airport is so much fun. I feel like even if you were just transiting, or like if you are ever going through Incheon, I would arrive at least a few more hours before, and I would go to the cultural center, which is right after immigration, I think. And they provide free activities, whether you're a foreigner or not. You can be Korean too. And they provide activities for kids, adults. Sometimes they have arts and crafts. You can make fans. You can make these like Korean dolls and color them, or they would talk to you about the culture of Korea. And I also heard if you have enough time when you're transiting, they allow you to go out of the airport and they will tour you, do a short tour of Seoul and come back. That's what I heard. There are free showers for anybody. You don't have to be a business class flyer. They have areas where you can sleep, lay down flat on a lounging chair. What else? They have performances that just happens everywhere. Musical performances, dancing. There are those traditional guards that dress up and like walk the airport. And I think it's a really great experience for people that are visiting Korea to get a bit of that at the airport.
I have done those tours where we had a 9-hour layover or something. So we booked 2 tours back to back. One was to a temple that was really close in Incheon, and then another one was the Korean War, I think they call it the American War Memorial. So we got to see that as well, which was really cool because that's in Incheon as well. And we just got to go on a tour bus and for 3 hours go around the Incheon area. We didn't have a long enough layover to do the full tour of Seoul, but if you have a really long layover, you can go all the way to Seoul. They'll take you on a shopping trip or something like that. And all of it's free. You just have to go and sign up for the tour, and then they'll say if they have enough space and what the next tour that you can jump on is. And all of it's free.
Is there like a minimum amount of hours you have to be transiting to do that?
Yes. So they will ask like, hey, when's your flight departing? I think they need to have you back 2 or 3 hours before your flight is scheduled to depart. So that is going to determine which of the tours that you can join.
That's amazing. I just heard about it. I didn't know it was, actually there.
Yeah, that's there. I tried the showers too. And this was well before my points life. I don't remember what year we flew this, but it was before I got into points and miles. So I'm like, this is amazing. People can just shower in airports. They had massage chairs for free. They had, like you mentioned, all the cultural performances and some art museums and everything. They had a whole children's play area.
Yes, I forgot to mention there are playgrounds like scattered around the airport, which is really nice for traveling with kids.
And if you are into points, which most people listening to this podcast are, there's a number of lounges that you can get into in Incheon Airport as well. Can you talk a little bit about the lounge experiences?
So I remember we used the priority pass to get into our lounges, and the most recent times we traveled with our kids, which is very hectic. They were very accommodating. They have high chairs. They come up to you and ask if you need anything, like especially order for the kids. And there is a good selection, and it's never been busy whenever we've been, at least. The food is pretty good. I mean, it's been very rushed every time we travel with the kids, but it's really nice to have that option because kids are constantly asking to eat. And even though I pack a lot of snacks in my bag, it's nice to like sit down somewhere and be able to eat some hot food, drinks, so that's nice.
What do you think are the chances that somebody will see a famous K-pop star or something while traveling through Incheon Airport? Do you think they go through there, or do they have their own private airport?
I have seen like one of the famous actors' manager. I even recognize his face because, that was one of my favorite actors back then. And I saw him like right next to me, and he was on the phone, probably looking for, I don't know who he was asking for, but I was like, oh my gosh, is he here? Like somewhere in the airport? But I have yet to, come across anybody famous.
Yeah, I don't know if they have their own private terminal. Like I know that in London Heathrow or LAX, there's a super private terminal. There's the PS Suites in LAX where they are completely sequestered from all mere mortals like us. So I don't know if Blackpink and BTS are the same way in Korea.
Probably.
I can't believe we've already recorded more than 100 podcast episodes. It feels like we just started yesterday, but we've already covered so many great points and miles strategies on this show and have many more to come. If you're new to this show or looking to level up your points game quickly, I offer a bunch of resources at geobreezetravel.com/start here. It includes links to free consults, free trials to some of my favorite points tools, and also links to services like group coaching, which start at only $5 per session through the Patreon. Again, that's geobreezetravel.com/start here, which I have linked for you in the show notes. All right, let's talk about once you leave the airport. What were your accommodations in Korea, and were you able to loop in points and miles into your strategy for your hotel stay at all? Because you were there for a while, right?
Yeah, the most recent trip we took, we actually flew to Jeju, so we had to transit to Gimpo Airport, and we did stay for almost like 2 months. Part of it, we stayed at my grandma's because it was still during the pandemic, and they didn't make us quarantine, but we still had to be at an address where they could find us. You had to be a Korean citizen or a person who was visiting that has family. So we stayed there for a week, and then we moved to 3 different Airbnbs just because we wanted to see different parts of Jeju. We used the Capital One portal to book Airbnb, part of it, because it was still like new to us. So we didn't have enough points to cover like 6-7 weeks of our stay in Airbnbs. Part of it was that, and the rest, I think we paid in cash, which was still good because the flight part was covered, and we didn't feel like we were paying so much to stay 2 months in Jeju.
The hotels in Korea, are they like in Europe where it's difficult to find hotel rooms that can accommodate 4 people all in one room?
So let me think. The most recent trip we went, we were still a family of 3, and we stayed at one of the hotels in Seoul. I think they allow up to 4. I might be wrong, but they didn't have a problem accommodating us as a family of 3. And the rooms are pretty spacious compared to my experience in the States, I think.
That's awesome to know. I know that when families travel to Europe, a lot of time they're like, the fire codes, like they'll only let you have 2. And there's no way around it. Like in the US, you can say that, you're booking for 2. And then if 2 more people show up and they happen to be children, like they usually don't care in the United States. But in Europe, those fire codes are very, very strict. So it sounds like in Korea, they're a little bit more flexible too. And there's a little bit more room to stretch out into a suite and do one of the fold out couches into a bed for your kids and everything, which is great.
Yeah, I was shocked when I was looking for hotels in Europe. I was like, why are they not allowing us to book one room for a family of 4? And they said, it's very normal to have those fire codes. And I didn't have that kind of experience when I was booking anything for my trip to Korea.
Tell us a little bit more about Jeju, because I know that most people who think about Korea just think about the city and Seoul and everything. Tell us about the experience in Jeju.
Jeju is like Hawaii. I mean, that's what they say. It's like the Hawaii of Seoul, Korea. But it's got 4 seasons. So it's very different all year round. Very laid back. People are very, very, very nice. I feel like there's something for everybody there. There's lots of hiking, there's beaches, very accommodating to kids. If you want to do camping is very big in Korea right now. So you'll see like camping sites everywhere. We've only been during the summertime with our kids. It can get quite hot, but just like anywhere in Korea, I feel like when you're indoors, that's not really a big problem. We did travel during the season, like right at the end of summer, starting fall. That was really nice, that transition period, because it will be like cooler, not as humid, lots of good food. Definitely a lot more nature than visiting Seoul. So it's a very different experience. I would always recommend people to check out Jeju if you're already in Seoul. It's only an hour flight, less than an hour flight.
How easy or difficult is that destination for anybody who does not speak any Korean?
They definitely don't speak as much English compared to Seoul, but I feel like, you can always like find ways to communicate, like hand gestures, whatever, like show them a picture. I don't think it's that hard. There's so many visitors, like foreigners that even live there, so I'm sure it's okay.
Yeah, Google Translate is magical, and it can even translate the Korean, Japanese, Chinese, all of the Asian characters just right before your eyes with Google Translate photo mode, which I always think is just like the most magical thing. If I'm reading something in Japanese, I like to translate random snacks sometimes from like the Asian grocery that I bring home. I'm like, what are these ingredients? And it's all like tapioca, maltodextrin, like things that don't make sense in English. So they definitely don't make sense in Chinese. But yeah, the Google Translate feature, the photo feature is really, really useful when traveling. So that's great to know for both Seoul and Jeju as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any other trip recommendations for Korea, especially for people who are traveling with small children? Like, what's the best things to do if you are on vacation in Korea and you have small children with you?
Korea is like so kid friendly. I mean, it's really funny because the kid friendly places are so kid friendly, and then they have no kid zones. They actually like put a huge pamphlet that says no kid zone. So there were a few cafes I really wanted to check out in Jeju, and we went and they were like, oh, this is a no kids zone, so only adults can come in. And that was the first time I experienced that. Like, they just don't let you come in with kids. Whereas if you go to the kid-friendly cafes, it's like literally so accommodating. It's called Kids Cafes, and it's like a cafe that's decorated really nicely, just like anything in Korea, I feel, with an indoor playground or even an outdoor playground, lots of activities to do, like a library section, a jumping gym. It's got everything. So those were lifesavers for us when it was raining and we had nowhere else to go. We would just sit at the cafe and enjoy our snacks and coffee while the kids just played for like hours. I mean, Korea is known for cafes, right? They have specific cafes that are dedicated to certain animals. Like if you want to go see cats, there are cat cafes or dog cafes. And I heard there are weird ones too, like really, like snake cafes or something like that. Those can be fun for kids. Parks, there's a lot of outdoor play area there. For us, like our travel style is not just like focused on kid-friendly stuff because we also want to enjoy things that we like to do as adults. So we kind of like accommodate both. Like we take them to things that we like to do as adults, and we'll balance that out with what the kids want to do.
What kind of more adult type of activities do you guys like to do? Is it more music or cultural related or restaurants or something else?
So I have a background in art, so I really like going to galleries, and galleries or museums or places that kids, you kind of want them to behave and be quiet. So we'll still take them. We'll take them and have them experience that kind of atmosphere, take a lot of snacks with you. Snacks are always the best thing to take when, traveling. We like to go on hikes. Our kids are still young, but we don't really carry them on our backs. We make them walk. So that, that kind of stuff. We just want them to enjoy not just the kid-friendly stuff, but things like mom and dad likes to do. And hopefully one day they'll, happily join us when they're a bit older.
Yeah, that's awesome. So any other tips about Korea for anybody who's traveling with kids or even as solo travelers as adults?
When I went with my one toddler to Seoul, I found it very overwhelming. Like it's very dense, right? And we thought having a stroller would be very convenient, but if you're taking public transportation, it's not really stroller friendly. Like there's a lot of stairs. Like I'm not used to that. There's so many stairs on all the, what is it called? Like the subway system. And if you want to take the elevator, you got to line up, but a lot of the elevators, all the old people want to take it. So you got to wait in line and it takes forever to just go up one floor. We recommend just taking cabs. And if you have the app Kakao, that's a good app to have. It also allows you to just like call a taxi. It's kind of like Uber.
How do you spell that?
Kakao.
That is a good tip.
Yeah, that one's good. So yeah, we ended up taking a lot of cabs. I wouldn't recommend renting a car in Seoul. It's really crazy driving there. People drive pretty rough, I think, compared to what I'm used to here driving in California.
Compared to San Francisco, people drive rough?
I don't know about that, but maybe it's kind of like San Francisco, but with a lot more cars.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's really crazy.
All right. Well, I hear that you are planning your first business class redemption trip then. So tell us a little bit about your next trip that you're going to take.
So we're going to France in the summer on Air France. This is our first business redemption for the family. So we're very much looking forward to it.
And the great thing about Air France when you're booking with kids is that they have a 25% discount when you book with points, which can save you a lot of points and miles as a family, especially if you have a larger family too. Do you remember how much you guys spent in points for your Air France trip?
Yes, it was just over 420, something like that.
420,000 for 4 people round trip in business class?
Yeah, round trip, which I thought it was amazing because we're not just going to Paris and we're going down to Provence. So we'll be flying into Nice and flying out of Marseille. When we put SFO to Nice, you are still paying the same amount of points to add another flight from Paris, like Paris to Nice, instead of just Paris to SFO. And then we're also getting another flight added on from Marseille to Paris and then Paris to SFO. I tried searching them separately and they were like the same.
That's awesome. American Airlines does the same thing where if you wanted to fly from SFO over to Doha, you can tack on stuff on either end where you can say Las Vegas to San Francisco to Doha to the Maldives, and it'll still price out at 70,000 miles per person one way in business class. And it sounds like Air France does something similar where they'll tack on the last leg of your itinerary over to Nice or Marseille for no additional points. That's awesome. Do you guys get a layover in Paris to explore there too?
Yes, we will stay there for a week, but majority of our time we'll be spending in the south of France.
That's awesome. Cool. Have you guys planned hotels or anything while you're there as well?
So because we're going for like a month again, when we do like a long trip, I prefer to stay at Airbnbs, make it more like home and have space for the kids to run around. I mean, I'll definitely miss out on the amenities that a hotel can provide, breakfast and all that, but it's kind of hectic when you're in a small room with 4 people, like 2 kids. So yeah, we're doing all of it apart from like the last 2 or 3 nights in Paris. We'll be at a hotel.
That's a really good way to do it. And a lot of people are like, oh, why are you still doing Airbnbs if you're in points and miles? But you can earn a lot of points by staying at Airbnbs, especially if you're buying like Airbnb gift cards through Chase Freedom Flex or Chase Ink Business Cash through Staples or the rotating category each quarter, because then that's 5 points per dollar on your Chase points that you can earn from your Airbnb stays and then apply those for flights. So there's lots of different ways to play the game.
Yeah, I thought about it for the longest time. I compared so many hotels and I went through so many Airbnbs, and it was so tempting when you come across like a huge house with a pool and a playground, and these Airbnbs that we chose had separate playrooms. So they already have books and toys for the kids, which is really hard to, I'll choose that option over like a hotel. So yeah, I was very happy to find those Airbnbs.
Yeah, I'm excited to see your points trip once it comes to life this summer. So until then, from everything that you've learned, and I know that you've just gotten started with points and miles, but you've already taken a really big trip to Asia. You guys have already booked a business class trip to France for an entire family of 4. In everything that you've learned about points and miles, what would you say is your number one piece of advice for listeners that I can fit on an Instagram quote card?
I mean, I just regret not starting earlier. I would just say it's never too late. Just start now and take it slowly, learn bit by bit.
Yeah, that's good advice, especially for anybody who's like, oh, I don't know if I should spend the points. Like you said, it's 400,000 points that were probably really hard to earn. And you're like, oh, I'm starting back at 0, but it's worth it. And the longer that you're in the game, the easier it is to earn more and more points. You learn a lot more ways to earn points.
Yeah. I feel like if you don't try it out, like if you just keep saving and not, finding ways to use them, it's hard to learn. I've learned a lot trying to get these business class flights redeemed. So
yeah, great advice. And speaking of great advice, can you give shout outs to someone else on the internet that you would recommend other people go follow for more points and miles tips?
I don't know if she's been mentioned already, but I like Travel Hacking Kids. Annie at Travel Hacking Kids. I've asked her so many questions. And she's like always very fast at responding and very patient, even though I sent her so many questions.
Cool. And where can we find you on the internet?
I'm at my name, Jun, Jun Katelyn. It's the other way around. I'm Katelyn Jun, but it's at Jun Katelyn.
On Instagram?
Yes, on Instagram. And I do have a website too. That's on Instagram linked.
What's your website? What can we find there?
I just started writing a lot about our travels as a family. I guess like tips on traveling with kids, mostly focusing on that, and yeah, like lifestyle stuff.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Katelyn, for coming onto the show and talking all about Korea and all of the different fun travel things that people can do there, especially people who have children and are like, oh, that's a really long flight. I don't know if I want to take my kids. I can't afford business class. Like, what if we just have to do economy? Is it going to be okay? Answer is it'll be okay. It'll be great.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Thank you for having me, Julia.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Geobreeze Travel Podcast. If any of the cards mentioned in today's episode piqued your interest, please check out the links in the show notes for more information on any of the cards. Also, if you apply for a card using the links on that page, I may receive a commission too, so please and thank you. P.S. I hear the links work better in Internet Explorer or Safari, and sometimes the credit card applications tend to glitch out in Chrome. Additionally, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to make even more travel hacking friends, please sign up for the Patreon to access our monthly masterclass hangouts. We dive deep into a particular points program each month, and you'll get to ask all of your travel hacking questions and enjoy being around other people who enjoy points and miles just as much as you and I do. If you would like an invite to the next one, head over to geobreezetravel.com/hangouts to sign up to be on the invite list. Take care and happy travels!